Hello again. This is Blake back again for the next part of the Diary of a Stranger. And I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure where to go from here. It's hard to really put something that's this long and this complicated into a perspective. I want to start with a timeline, which is where I think I was in the first video. So, I think I should probably start with where it started, right? I've given you a brief lowdown, but I'm talking about actually going through and explaining things in part from the beginning. It's either that or I will instead start by introducing the characters of our little diary. I'm not sure. Let's start. We'll go back and we'll start talking about what happened. And then as needed, I might introduce the people within it. Obviously, I'm going to start using fake names. My name is Blake. I will leave that the same. But there's very few times I'm going to be talking about myself in the third person. So, where do we start? We start in February. It would have been early February, I'm pretty sure, because myself and my ex-girlfriend were still together around Valentine's Day. So we'll start in February. Now we need to work out names. My friend that moved in, we'll call her Ruby. And my ex-girlfriend, we'll call her Jessica, I guess. Let's give it a bit of substance. So, my friend Ruby sent me a message on Facebook and said, "Hey, look, I need some help and I'm not too sure where to go." She explained to me her situation, and her boyfriend was physically and emotionally abusive. Now, I'm not going to explain now, but I cannot stand domestic violence. I've lost somebody to domestic violence before, and that is definitely a story for another time, maybe even chapter 2 if we get that far. So, I'm being told these stories. Her boyfriend's emotionally manipulative, tells her she's too fat. Now, she was a size 8, I think, at the time, maybe even a size 10, and that's fucking healthy. That's fine. Hell, you can even go up to much higher sizes before it becomes unhealthy. That's all that matters to someone like me, is it doesn't matter how much you weigh as long as you're a healthy person. So, he would always tell her things like, she's fat and she's ugly. He would tell her, he would check out girls in the street and say things about her, calling her sexy, and saying he'd like to do things to her, which is disgusting behavior. It is disgusting behavior for any man in a relationship. I was also told things like he'd physically hit her. I'm not sure on all the details, I'll be honest, but I know of times where he's stood on her throat and strangled her and left bruises, and I couldn't stand idly by losing a mother to domestic violence if I knew I could help somebody even survive it this time, you know? So, she said she doesn't know what to do and she asked if I could help. I offered her a place on my lounge because she was being kicked out. She said, if possible, that's fine. She has a cat. It's a therapy cat to come with her, if that's okay. And I said, look, I have a bird. I've had him for 7 years. He's been through with me throughout a majority of the shit that's happened in my past. As long as we can look after both of them at the same time and my bird doesn't get hurt, I don't mind if you bring the cat along. So what I did then was I started to ask the people that live in my house. Now, at the time, there were 4 others that lived in my house, I believe. Or it could have been 5 or 6. I'm not sure, actually, at the moment. It's really hard to tell. I'm pretty sure it was 4. So I had a chat to each person individually. I go, this is the situation. These are the circumstances. We've talked about her staying on the couch for about 3 months. Now, her financial situation is very dire. I've said that she'll have to chip in for food, but apart from things like rent, electricity, all that stuff, we're going to continue covering it like normal. Every single person involved said yes. Some had their doubts. Some said just be a bit careful, whatnot. Can she be trustworthy? I've stood up for her. I said yes, she's trustworthy. And again, like I said, I explained everything, the situation, and I vouched for her. I told her that we were all fine with it. We organized a day for her to drop her stuff off and a day for her to officially move in. She came around with a friend of hers to help her drop off her stuff because there was more than one carload, I think, at the time. Or there was something wrong with her car, actually, at the time. They dropped off some stuff. We had a chat. I finally got to meet the little kitty who is named Bubbles. He's a gorgeous little cat. Definitely one of my favorites. And we set up the lounge room the best that we could. We had a blow-up mattress. Unfortunately, Bubbles decided to scratch through it and deflate it within like 2 weeks. So we had to sort something out there. And the move happened. And everyone was still on the same page. We were all aware of what was going on. And it was fine. It's completely fine. Now, just after I'd asked everybody in the house, I had also turned around and I'd asked my girlfriend at the time, I think I said I was going to call her Jessica for this. I turned around to Jessica and I said, hey, this is the situation. She needs somewhere to stay. She'll be sleeping on the couch. We've talked about 3 months. These are the circumstances. Now, my girlfriend didn't live with us. Not at all. She just came over like 2, maybe 3 times a week. But we were all friends. We all hung out together. We all went out together. It was a big thing. She voiced her opinion, and it was, as I said in the last video, it was pretty defensive. She was a little worried, but she turned around and says, you know what, it's okay. It's okay. But I don't like this, I'll be honest. I'm like, that's fine. You don't, like, your opinion matters. It does, it really does, but it does come into, she needs the help, and I'm going to offer it, definitely. So, Jessica was okay with this. And as time passed, let's go for the first week. Ruby and Jessica, I would try to get them to talk and get along, so that way Jessica didn't feel so scared. Unfortunately, it kind of went the other way. Jessica started to get really, really defensive and say, I don't like this chick. Wouldn't use her name anymore. So, that was within the first week. Within the second week, she would start to say things like, I want her gone. I want her out on the street. I don't care what happens to her. I don't care what happens to her car or her cat. I just want her gone. And I didn't like this at all. And then she started to say the same thing to everybody else that was in the house. And start saying these scenarios and making everybody in the house turn against Ruby. One after another after another. Eventually, no one would really talk to her except for one of the housemates who had been friends with Ruby before. And even then, it was very distant. After a while, I started to get a lot of ire as well because I was standing up for Ruby. And yes, Jessica was my girlfriend at the time, but with the way that she was acting, obviously I was going to stand up for my friend because my friend needed the help and my girlfriend was being mean. She was being uncalled for. Not many things were said or done that really left the impression like Jessica was going to, well, that Ruby was going to be a problem. As it started to really expand, as the problem started to get worse, I would pull Jessica aside and I would say, look, I need to know what's going on between you and Ruby. She's here to get help, so why do you seem to be so upset? Talk to me. We've been together for 5.5 years. Talk to me. And she would start off very sincere, saying things like, I'm just scared that she's going to take you from me and things like that, which is fair. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with jealousy and defending someone you care about. You can love a relationship that much that you don't want it to end. It's not necessarily about ownership. And that was fair. But I said, look, I understand, and you can come to me with these problems anytime. I'll do anything to help you, feel more comfortable with this. I'll be as open with you as I can about everything that happens. No closed doors. I've always been that way. And for a few days, it was okay. And then there was another lapse. And I'll be honest, I don't really know what caused it, but it started to get worse. Actually, I do know what caused it. Within the 2 weeks or so of Ruby moving in, Ruby and I would talk. And it would get like long conversations. We called them D&Ms, deep and meaningful conversations. And they could start at like 10 o'clock at night. And we'd be sitting in the lounge room talking and talking and talking until I think 4 or 5 was one of the latest. We talked for hours about everything, about what her ex-boyfriend had did to her, about my life and the things that I've been through, things that you'll hear about eventually. Even things that aren't at all like that. You know, those strange shower conversations, shower thoughts, they're called, where you start to question the fabric of reality. These were the kind of conversations that we would have. And I reveled in this because I don't have many people I can have these kinds of conversations with. In fact, I'll be honest, I don't have any. Not to the same degree. It's a thought experiment, and those get me going. I love them. So Jessica would hear about our conversations dead at night. So I'll be honest, it looked bad because the lounge room door was closed so the cat wouldn't get to the bird. The light was off, but there was nothing happening. People walked in and out all the time. We were sitting on different couches for a majority of it. And it was always just conversation. That was it. But obviously, Jessica took it the wrong way. And it got worse and worse and worse. And it got difficult to talk to her about the problem. She would start to hide them from me. She would lash out and be angry. I started to get messages like, kick her out. It's her or me. Now, knowing that Jessica can go back and live with her parents. Well, she lives with her parents, so it's not really a lack of resource. But Ruby had nowhere to go. So I turned around and I go, look, Jess, I need you to calm down. If you're going to continue being this way, I'm going to ask you to stay out of my house for about a week. Maybe if we can get you two apart, we can come back together with a clear head and we can talk about this. It got to a point where we had to start having these conversations in the public park because we couldn't have them in either of our houses because there was some bias, some environmental bias or stigma, and it was bad. So the arguments would continue to blow up. Now we're still talking about the first 2 weeks. It would get to a point where I didn't want to face the problem sometimes. So there were a few days, like I said, where Jessica didn't come around. We separated. We not separated. We had this moment of separation. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, if you understand that saying. Then it approached Valentine's Day. We had a plan. We were going to go see Deadpool, have food, come back home, do the usual Valentine's Day stuff, and go to sleep. The movie was great. Dinner was fine. On the way back, arguments started again. She would be really negative, and I'm a person who's generally depressed, but I hide it with laughter, and it got to a point where I couldn't do that anymore. So we got home, and I needed help, and I went to the wrong person for help. I went to Ruby. Alright, look, this is the situation with Jessica. I want to make this work. I want to make all this work, because there's no way in hell I'm kicking you out. There's no way in hell I'm going to let you leave. But there's, like, I don't know how to deal with Jess. I have no idea how to stop her from being upset. I've tried to get used to talk, but you refuse to be in the room together because you don't like the things that she said about you, and she doesn't like the way I talk to you, and I don't know how to solve this problem. I'm well out of my depth. I've never had this before. Now, that Valentine's Day, we talked until about 2 or 3 in the morning. Jessica was asleep by the time I entered back into the room. Oh no, she wasn't. She was still awake. But I was still really upset with her. Ruby told me just to keep trying. If Jessica really liked me, Jessica really wanted to be with me, she'd be able to see from my perspective, but I need to do the same thing. And that was when I started to think about, what is jealousy? What does it mean? How does it work? These are things I'm going to have to cover in a video alone, because that will take a long time. But I understood that jealousy is a good thing, but the way that you act on jealousy is what defines you. And I tried to have a chat. I'm like, look, I understand you're getting defensive and jealous, and I honestly appreciate that, as bad as it might sound. But I need you to also stop and think about what your actions might do to this person that you barely know. Do you really want to push them out on the street with next to no money, living out of their car, or in a refuge where it could be equally as dangerous? And she turned around and she told to me, I don't fucking care. And that radiated through my head for the next few days. So this is when we enacted that I want to meet up kind of thing. It was a few days later. I go, look, Jess, I want to meet up at the park near the train station and have a conversation. And we did. And I explained to her how the things that she was saying was making me feel, how the things I was trying to do were making her feel the best that I could see, and what was happening to the house, to my friends, how it was making everybody feel when we would fight, because we never used to fight. And I go, look, it needs to change. And during that conversation, she said, yes, it does, but nothing can happen while Ruby is still in the house. Now, keep in mind, she still would not say my friend's name. She would just avoid it. That chick, or that bitch, would be how she would say it. And that hurt a lot. I go, look, if you can't start to change the way that your attitude is with this, I think we should have maybe a break. 2 weeks where we can still talk, but we don't see each other. No one stays over each other's house. We need to realize that this is a real thing, and that if we continue fighting, we could lose each other. And she agreed. She agreed that this was a good idea, but she did hate it. Now, at this moment, we were both emotionally charged. I'll admit, I was crying. She was crying. I was trying to solve this the best way I could, because I didn't want to lose her at the time. Even with everything, she'd still been there through some of the hardest parts of my life, and I didn't want to lose her. I didn't want to just let it go. I was brought up in the era where if it was broken, you fixed it before you would look at buying something new. That night, I can't honestly remember exactly when it was. It could have been late March. Actually, it could have been early March or late February was when this was going down. And that night was where things got bad. So we came back and I was helping my downstairs housemate whose wife had left him months before clean up his house after the first time he'd stepped into it in months. He needed the help. So myself, Ruby were downstairs. We were helping clean up the mess that she had left because she was just a messy person and not the best mother, if I do say so myself. So we were helping him out. We were doing great. It got to about 8 o'clock and I got this text message and it said, it was from Jessica. It said, "I've collected my things. And I think it said, we're over." And I tried to get in contact with her. I walked upstairs and yeah, she'd been through the house. She'd taken all of her stuff. Left a photo of myself and her on the bed. Left jewelry. And she'd broken up with me. And I was destroyed. I walked back downstairs. I was quiet. I helped clean some more. And I told them what happened. And then I told them that I needed some time alone. And I walked back upstairs. And everyone else in the house was gone. I didn't realize that everybody that was upstairs, my 2 other housemates, had actually gone with Jessica to take all of her stuff. They were all over at her house. So the house was empty. I opened up the liquor cabinet and I emptied it. I drank a bottle of tequila, half a bottle of vodka. There was so much more. I drank so much that night. And I was ruined. And what happened that night, alright, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll just tell you what happened. So, after that, I was sitting in the lounge room, drinking. I wasn't sad anymore, I was dead inside. You know that feeling you get when you can't feel anything? I was dead inside, I was angry, I was confused, and I wanted a release. And Ruby came upstairs, and we started to talk. And she had a few drinks too. And we hooked up. And one thing led to another. We ended up in the bedroom. And we had sex. Now, just near the end of our... just near the end of it, I hear a car pull up. And it's my housemates coming back from dropping off the stuff with Jessica. And I didn't care. I didn't care if they knew. I didn't care. She said to stop, and I said no. Not at all. I wanted them to know, I guess. I don't regret it. There's one thing, I don't regret it. It was probably the best thing I could have done, because if I would have continued drinking, I probably would have ended up in the hospital. But I felt important for the first time in a long time. So, yeah, I don't regret it. I would have done it 100 times over, and I did. So the next morning, no one was speaking to either of us. I received a text message that night from Jessica's mother going, "I can't believe you'd do something like this to Jess." You're disgusting, and all this other stuff. Now, I don't know how to take this bit. This is my first moral dilemma. My ex... So this is where we're going to break from the story. We'll come back to it. But my ex later on was telling everybody that I cheated on her. I don't think that's the case. I honestly don't. She broke up with me and I did something that was out of character, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that counts as cheating. I think what upset her the most was the person it was with. But again, like I said, I don't regret anything. Two consenting adults, we both wanted to do it. I wasn't in a relationship anymore and I was numb. I wanted to feel something. And I think Ruby was the same. And we did, which was good. But that's where my first question, I suppose, lies about my morality. Is, did I handle everything the right way? Was there a way I could have solved the problem where everyone was happy? I don't personally think that kicking Ruby out was a solution. I don't think it would ever have been a solution, nor would I have ever considered doing it. I never considered doing it. But do you think that Jessica took that the wrong way? Do you think Jessica acted wrong, or do you think I acted wrong? I'd love anyone's opinion. If you ever see this, I would really like to know. My next question is that cheating? There was no intent beforehand. It was only after. I mean, I wasn't in a relationship anymore. It was already changed on Facebook, so you know it's official then. But is that cheating? Is there some sort of rule against that? Because it seems like a pretty common solution to this kind of problem. I'm gonna leave this, I think, on those questions. In my next diary entry, I might explain a little bit more about my ex-girlfriend Jessica. So you can kind of understand who she is, her background as best that I could see it. I knew her for a very long time, and I can also explain to you later on where she came back out. So at least this way you've got more perspective and more understanding. I know I said these videos weren't going to be very long, but this one's half an hour of me talking, and I'm just a fucking idiot. But thank you for listening once more. If you have any questions or would like to give me any feedback, or if you would like to talk, you can leave all of that information down in the comments section below the video. If you're interested in my story and you want to continue it, you can like the video. Like I said, these videos are not monetized. I'm not trying to make money. I'm just trying to heal. Thank you again for listening to my diary of a stranger, and I will see you in the next entry.